why not just be the person that wants to do the projects and build on my ideas,
When you're putting your own capital at risk, when you're risking your own time, when you're risking the lack of stability, it can be scary.
Founders get most of the return because they're putting their time, reputation, and everything at stake.
So to make 1,000 in a single day was mind-blowing.
If you can't convince yourself to use it, then how are you going to convince others?
And we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to the Nalikes Podcast. I am Talha Asif, your host, and in each episode we bring you insightful conversations with the founders and builders who are shaping the future of Web3. Our goal here is to educate and inspire the founders while showcasing what other successful founders are doing for their projects and startups in the space. Make sure you watch till the end, as you will learn practical and actionable steps that you can apply to your own projects and startups today. Today's guests are Kyle and Jordan. They are the founder of Galaxy Protocol, and they are really good friends. They've been in the space for more than half a decade now, have worked on several DeFi projects, and they are building the next big thing in the Web3 space, which is an OTC marketplace. So thank you so much for coming on, guys. How are you today?
We're amazing. Thank you so much for having us on. Speak for myself and Jordan. It's our first experience on a podcast, especially for Galaxy. So yeah, I'm really excited to get into this.
Yeah, because I wanted to do this because you guys have been building something great and people should know about it, because there are some founders who want to build in silence, but I think you guys should build in public. Amazing. So before we jump, my goal here is today, Kyle and Jordan, is to pick your brain, first of all, on how you guys have been able to build a successful startup, or you continue to do so while others are struggling. But before we do that, can you quickly give me a background, Kyle and Jordan, whoever want to go first?
Yeah, of course, I can go first for sure. So yeah, like Talha said, my name is Kyle. I graduated in business analytics and computer science in Malta's most prestigious computer systems university, where I pretty much built a very solid foundation in analytical and technical aspects of the tech industry. I then leveraged this into joining big companies such as PwC and Vodafone, which many Europeans would know as a telecom service. After some time, I decided, I have a bit of creative ideas that I wanted to build on myself. And so I decided to kind of get out of that 9-to-5 idea and focus on my own aspirations and build on my own dreams, right? So I started mainly as anyone else would. I started from freelancing. I quit my job and I started doing freelance project management and helped a bit with development here and there. I taught myself some skills. Not a professional, but did whatever I could to get skin in the game, and that was pretty much where I started to get my first encounters with crypto and how I really got into the space. And eventually, I decided why not take it an even step further, and rather than being a freelance developer or project manager, why not just be the person that wants to do the projects and build on my ideas, because I'm always getting all these info and these ideas from all my clients, and then I'm like, you know what, I have my own ideas, let me build on them, and that's pretty much where everything kicked off.
Got it. There's so much value to unpack there. Skin in the game, escaping the 9-to-5, and there's a ton of value. So we'll cover that in the episode. But thank you so much, Jordan. Do you want to say something?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Mine's a bit more basic, bit more of a basic background from my end. So in terms of my education, I actually graduated with a master's in digital marketing and business development within the same school that Kyle did. I've been in the crypto space myself since 2020. So 4 years now. So I've rode the ups and downs. I've been here for a while. I've actually been helping and advising and marketing for projects for over 3 years now. So I've managed to actually build a very vast network of venture capitals, angel investors, along with multiple KOLs and a couple market makers as well. And through this network, I basically apply, my knowledge in terms of advising projects, marketing for projects, utilizing the people I've met along my 3 to 4 year journey to basically aid projects in a variety of aspects.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Kyle, I want to cover two things. One is escaping the 9-to-5 and skin in the game. Do you mind if you want to elaborate on that? Because these are two things that I'm personally obsessed with, because skin in the game is everything. So please, share, how did you escape the 9-to-5, and the people watching, how they can do it in the Web3 space, and tell them how important it is to have skin in the game. If you can explain what is skin in the game as well.
Of course, of course. Well, look, personally, it comes down to how you feel you want to live your life. I think a lot of people, when they think of 9 to 5, they always think of it negative. There's nothing really negative about it. It's just personally for myself, I've always set really high standards for my lifestyle and what I want to do. And I've always been told, even being brought up, that I could do anything, right? And I brought this idea, kept it throughout my whole life, and just working for people never really clicked for me because I never felt like my opinions were being valued as much, especially since I had just been graduated from my university, where obviously I got opportunities, but my opinion wasn't really as valid as, people who've been working there for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So, it hit me. I'm like, if my voice isn't gonna get anywhere just because of like my young age, etc. When I know that to a certain extent, being young and having not a lot of experience, which is again where skin in the game comes, um, but by being young, being fresh of ideas, being energized, I wanted to leverage that while I can, take the risk while I'm young, and thankfully it paid off. But yeah, I mean, skin in the game is very important. I couldn't just leave my job and get and like spawn or like end up where I am now. There were a lot of obstacles and things I had to do to build up here. My route took fairly long, right? Like I'm saying, it took at least 3 years from getting into crypto, right? I quit my job like 4 years ago, but 3 years is how long it took for me to build a network, figure out what I'm good at. I taught myself a lot of skills before I even bothered to approach clients. I've taught myself how to use Figma, a graphic design tool. I taught myself some coding stuff, things that I also learned from school, obviously also had place in what I'm trying to do. But at the end of the day, it's important that you build your own skin in the game and figure out what's good for you and what you're good at. That way you could leverage it and build something meaningful to clients. And then from there, I was able to actually say, listen, for example, right now I'm working on Galaxy, right? An OTC trading platform for
We'll talk
pre-market
about it.
listings.
Let's keep it for later. I want
Yes,
to ask a lot
we'll
of
go
questions.
more
We'll keep.
into detail on that for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I didn't just say, listen, I want to do this. I had skin in the game. I had experience working for an OTC platform. I knew what it takes to build an OTC platform. And so because of that, I knew I was capable of doing it, right? And with this experience working for a massive OTC platform for over 2 years, um, you know, it pretty much one thing led to another. And I'm like, listen, I know the systems. I know how to sell it. I know the importance. I know the market. I know the audience. And that's pretty much why I'm saying skin in the game is really important and why there were steps that I had to take to get myself to this position right now.
And very interesting. Jordan, you want to add anything on escaping the 9 to 5
Yeah,
and skin in the game?
100%.
Because I think most of the young people that are
100%.
out there, and especially in my network, they want to get out of it. Because if we
Yeah.
see the generation that was before us, they were fine with it, right? They wanted to work like 30, 40 years for someone.
Yeah.
They were fine with like living a mediocre life or average life. But now with the internet, where like we're seeing these young kids making millions. So, like, what's your thought on that? Like, I want, because what I want is for those of them who are watching first, believe it's possible. Because if you don't believe, it's not going to happen. Because I was in this position as well, where I wanted to escape the 9 to 5 and I wanted to have skin in the game. So, can you tell how people can do it? And because I want to make sure the reader, what the audience can apply them, and
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think we're in a totally different generation and age. Like you said, the internet brought that to us. I think we're in an age of easy money, so to speak, where we're in the crypto space. You know how things go. Kyle knows how things go in terms of how easy it is to capitalize on moments, capitalize on research, and capitalize on hard work. Because although I did call it easy money, it won't be easy without putting in the hard miles and the hard work. When you have, like you said, skin in the game, when you're putting your own capital at risk, when you're risking your own time, when you're risking the lack of stability, the lack of a bunch of other benefits that the regular 9 to 5 provides, it can be scary, definitely, and it can be something which puts a bunch of people off, right? Some people just aren't built for it, right? The fact that there's a small percentage or there's a small or high chance that their endeavor or their venture or their idea or whatever they're trying to get into can fail, puts so many people off, right? And my statement to that is, okay, worst case scenario, it fails, but you're gonna end up in the situation you are now anyways. So why not try it? And worst case scenario, you're back here. So it's a pretty much a no brainer in terms of people actually trying to pursue something that is going to give them other options financially, and it's also going to free their time up. So in terms of the actual mechanisms and the way of being able to escape the 9 to 5, make your own money, and scale your business, it pretty much depends on the sector. It depends on the person. It depends on how much time and hard work they're willing to put in. For me personally, it was a mixture of hard work, a lot of networking, a lot of conversations. I think that's the number one thing that people need to realize, that they have to talk to people to get what they want to get. They can't get there alone. They have to talk to people like-minded, because that's how I made most of my money, by just talking to people, being in the right situations at the right time. And obviously there is the small portion of luck that comes into it, because if you're never
Yeah.
lucky, then it's hard. But I believe you create your own luck as well. So it's a mix of everything, honestly.
Ex- Exactly. I think luck is a very tricky thing for me personally as well, because if we say, okay, if we'll get that some people get lucky, then you will never take action. So what I believe is that you create your own luck. I mean, the more work you put in, the
Exactly.
more opportunities you put yourself out there, you create your own luck. Okay. So from what I've understood, that there's no prescription or exact steps that someone can take to escape the 9 to 5 and, you know, uh, do what they want to do. But if we were to give a framework, which is basically, first you have to have faith and belief that this is possible for you, because if you don't have faith and belief, it wouldn't work. So faith and belief, and then basically you need to ask yourself, are you that kind of person? Are you built for it? Because some people are not just built for it, right? Some people are pampered, they haven't faced any difficult situations, and they've been spoon-fed their entire life. So they are not the kind of people, because you'll be humiliated, you'll be rejected. Because if you're a founder, you have to put your humility aside. Cool. So mindset, having faith, and then basically, because I'm trying to give a framework for those that are watching, right? So it could be having the mindset and believe that it's possible, then spending time on one particular skill, or just like you said, either it could be networking, or it could be focusing on your design or programming skills, and basically just expose yourself to more and more things, so you can attract opportunities your way. So that's like how you can escape 9 to 5. Because some people take the reckless way, which is like, if they're just working, they'll just leave their job, okay, and then just go all in. I wouldn't suggest that, because if you have bills to pay and people to feed, you shouldn't do that. But you can start taking action small way, and once you figure it out, then you can just switch. And having skin in the game is and I think that's something I learned from Naval Ravikant, is that you will not. Naval Ravikant is like a founder of Agent List, and is Indian American billionaire, who's also the investor in Uber. He says that you will not get rich by renting out your time. You need to have a piece of equity in a business. So for those of people that are watching, if they're a founder, they already have equity or skin in the game. But if they're not a founder, there's so many other ways you can have skin in the game. Is basically, you can, if you're even an employee of a startup, you can ask for getting compensated in the tokens or in crypto. Like, you can get compensated in tokens, or you can get compensated in equity. So always, the people that are watching, they can strive for having equity in any company, business, because that is the only way you will make. Because let's say if you're talking for a Web3 startup, right, there are 2 founders and 5 employees. If the project succeeds, the founders get most of the return, because they're putting their time, reputation, and everything at stake. So they have the more risk, and they get the most reward. Employees, there, because the employees get paid first, right, regardless if the project succeed or not. So they don't have skin in the game. Amazing. Very interesting. All right, cool. So I want to talk about, what was your first encounter with Web3? Because that's how things start, right? Like that aha moment. Oh, there's something called
Yeah, yeah,
crypto. Jordan, I think your story is quite interesting. Do you mind want to go first on your first encounter with crypto?
yeah, 100%. So before I actually got into it hands-on, I had heard about crypto for a while, right? From 2017 onwards. I never actually delved into it and delved into the space, and what makes it unique, the different ways one can make money from the space, etc. So the first actual hands-on moment I had with crypto, where I actually took action and got into the space, was a couple of things, right? So I first ended up watching a YouTube video that just popped up randomly on my YouTube feed about an NFT project. Now, back then, and this is when NFTs were like really taking off, right? 2020, going into 2021. So back then, I had no idea what these things were. How can I make money off it? I had no idea, right? So yeah, I think it was like it was like a bee collection of NFTs about different, artworks of bees. And I remember spending around 60 days in their Discord trying to get a whitelist. I don't know if you remember how NFTs used to work or how they
Yeah,
still work. It was a whitelist,
yeah,
right? To be able to mint
yeah.
them. Spend 60 days in that Discord trying to get a whitelist for a worthless NFT that I didn't end up getting, and the NFTs ended up being worthless anyways. So yeah, everyone had
Why were you
paid for the mint lost.
why were you grinding? Did you have the conviction that this would help you make money, or what was the reason?
I was so new that I didn't even know what conviction is. It's one of those things where it's at that time it's the only thing I knew, and it was sort of like a cult mentality where damn, I'm in this cult, I'm in this group, which is a very bad mentality to have, by the way. In this space is what I learned: never to marry your bags or marry a certain aspect of crypto ever. When it's time to go, you go. But yeah, so I was in the sort of cult mentality where this is awesome. These guys are going to change the world. Honeybees are going to whatever. It was so stupid. My thinking at that time was awful. Um, and then from then, how I kind of pivoted is I started talking to people from that Discord after everything went to crap, right? We started, reaching, sort of like discussing about the other aspects of crypto. Some people in that group had delved a lot into trading, so trading majors, utilizing futures on exchanges, whatever for perps. And another subset of that group were really into like low cap meme coin, like alpha hunters and all that stuff. And that's actually the two ways where I actually latched out or reached out in terms of other than this NFT honeybee group. And from there I just continued to talk to more people, continue to build my skill set. I saw that, wow, like if you're really locked in, if you really know what you're doing, if you really know how to read the blockchain, read smart contracts, read these low cap meme coins, if you really know how to understand how trading macros works, and how to actually be profitable on a longer time frame, then oh my god, this is a space where I can literally make a living off of it, and this is the thing for me. The thing, it's funny because before crypto I tried so many things to escape the 9 to 5. That never worked, right? I tried starting a makeup brand, which I thought would take off in my local town.
Why I make a brand? I'm curious.
Honestly, I mean, I think I saw a YouTube video of someone that had a really massive makeup brand. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I can.
Was it a TikTok?
I had no.
Was it a TikTok video? Because I
Yeah,
came
it
across
was.
one.
It was,
Yeah.
and I had no passion for makeup. I had no conviction. I didn't even know the business, so it was completely. It was a weird idea. And then I tried drop shipping, e-commerce, all the regular stuff a young guy tries to try and get out of the easy money, to get into the easy money world, and crypto just stuck. Honestly, crypto is so lucrative if you really put in the time and work. It's incredibly lucrative. The thing is, a bunch of people know about crypto, right? A bunch of people know how to invest and all that stuff. But the niches in crypto, development, marketing, KOL management, being a KOL yourself, being an influencer yourself, that's one of the most lucrative sort of side hustles or jobs or routes you can take. And not many people know about it. And I think once it starts to get too saturated, then it'll start to die down. However, at this moment, if people were to really tap into the niches in crypto, about the stuff I just mentioned, I mean, it's one of the best areas to get into, apart from all the saturated areas such as dropshipping, e-commerce, and all that stuff.
Got it. So it's safe to say your first encounter was through NFTs. You got in and
Through
you
NFT.
ended up wasting your time and did not get anything. But the good thing that came out of that was you kept on going, and then eventually you found trading, and with trading you keep on getting more things. And then when was your first win? Like, what was your first win? Because one thing that I realized that once you make it, right, once you have had a success, it's easy to continue. But if you're failing for a long time and you're not making, just like you were doing with previous ventures,
Yeah,
you don't continue. And there are a lot of people who have failed in crypto as well, right? I personally know a lot of people who lost a lot of money. So what was your first win that kept on going, and how can people find their first win? Because from your story, it seems like you just keep at it, just keep going, and you'll find something.
Yeah. Well, for me, in terms of actually reaching, for me, it was always portfolio figures, right? Milestones in my head of like, oh, reaching 5 figures, reaching six figures, and 7 figures is inevitably the goal for everyone, right? And then, once you get there, you want to start reaching new heights, 8 figures, whatever, but that takes a bit more time. So for me, it was a couple of small wins, 1,000 here, 2,000 here, 3,000 here, back when I was just starting out. And mind you, I was working a 9 to 5, right, at this moment in time. So I was making 1,500 a month from my 9 to 5. So to make 1,000 in a single day was mind blowing. So I'd consider that as a small win. The first or the actual or my biggest ever win to really set me in the space and really just incentivize me to keep on going, etc. And made it gave me a long runway, right, in terms of stability, financial stability, in terms of being able to build whatever I want, such as a Galaxy and things like this. It was Solana, back at around $22. So I got into that. I'd put all my money into that. Every single penny I had, I had barely enough food to eat. So this was in the 5 figures. And yeah, it ended up being very fruitful. Funnily enough, I do a lot of research for every single project that I put money into. However, when I actually decided to go full in on that certain asset, I had done very little research, and my thinking was that it was so simple. My thinking was so simple. My thinking was, okay, previous bull market heights 250. If I just invest here and it goes back to 250, wow, that's it. That's literally it. And you can't have that thinking for every single project, because not every project can go back to the previous highs. There's so many coins out there in today's day and age that there's not enough liquidity for all these dinosaur coins to reach their old highs. So Solana just happened to be the ones that gained so much mind share in the space, so much trading volume, and was quote unquote lucky on. So was super stoked about that. The first major L I took ever was actually recently. My portfolio all-time high, I believe, was March. I think everyone's was. March was crazy. Everything was going crazy. I was euphoric. I wasn't even calculating it. It was like crazy. 5 figures a week in terms of gains. But in terms of the actual humbling moment, it was right after March, end of April, where I went big on a couple of trades, took a substantial loss. And we're currently in a spot where I'm slightly under what I was in March in terms of my all-time high in terms of euphoria, in terms of my portfolio. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster since February, January, ups and downs. However, to this date, I'm super grateful. I'm in an amazing position where I don't have to necessarily worry about money too much in terms of providing all my time to projects such as Galaxy, where I can just be completely honed in on without having to worry about other things. And the fact that I am still pretty young, don't have too much responsibilities besides my career is
You can
a
take
major
more
thing.
risk.
I mean, the older exactly, I can take more risks. If everything fails, then okay, whatever, we'll start again, we'll try again, we'll go again. But I think for young guys, it's really a positive to be in this space and take risks. And if it doesn't work out, so it's not the end of the world.
So much value to unpack there. I'll get into these questions, but thank you so much.
Awesome.
Kyle, if you can quickly tell us, how did you get into Web3? Because then, and I'll ask you next, how did you come together? And then how did you come up with Galaxy? But I want to know your background in crypto, especially, Kyle.
Of course. Pretty much, like I said on my background, it's mainly the first intro that I got onto crypto was through my freelancing work. First I started for Web2 projects, and then slowly I seemed to be getting a bit more work in the Web3 space. And it started to get my attention. I'm like, why is everyone building in Web3? What are smart contracts? Why is everyone asking for these things? Like, what is it? And then people start asking me, do you know how to deploy tokens? And then I heard about the meme space and how much people are making millions and millions of dollars flipping.
I just want to stop
like
you, please. Sorry to stop you. I want to say that for those of you who are watching, this is not a financial advice, because it seems like you will get people excited and they'll go invest. So please don't invest in anything we are saying.
I lost a ton of money.
Nothing on this podcast is financial advice, please. I'm saying this for the audience. Go
100%.
ahead, continue, Kyle.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the same way you can make a lot of money in this space, you can really lose. That's the risk that you're getting from, micro caps, small tokens that really haven't blown up yet. And I keep getting these questions like, yo, Kyle, do you know how to deploy a token? Do you know, like, did you see this? Did you see that? And I kind of like put it on the sidelines as much as possible because I was strictly focused on, uh, portfolio and project management. Like that's all I wanted. I just wanted to make a small salary enough to make back what I was losing from my 9 to 5. Just to say that listen, yeah, I'm making the same salary, but at least I can work from wherever and whenever I want. Um, and over time, especially with my relationship with Jordan, when he started to get into crypto, he started telling me about the opportunities that are in the space, and he started telling me like, look, I've seen this token. And I remember one time the first ever trade I ever did. I was on the bus because back then I had like no money. I was on the bus and I had no service because I couldn't even afford my phone bill. And I got home and I see a message from Jordan saying, hey bro, I invested in this token, and that was like 30 minutes ago. And I arrive home. I'm like, Jordan, how do I buy this token? He walks me through it. I visit Uniswap and all these platforms for the first time. I get my wallet funded and I invest $100 and I turn it into 300. And that was crazy to me because I was like, this is the first ever internet money I've ever made, like on crypto, and I can see where the hype is. And from there, just stuff just kept going upwards and upwards. Obviously, I lost a lot of money. There were many occasions where I would have reached my yearly goal and then lost it all like a few months later. Like it happens a lot. But when you lose, you learn a lot. And
Yeah.
I always believe that you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your wins. And it's carried over through my entire life pretty much. And yeah, obviously now I'm at a stage where I have a lot to lose, and so I keep my head above water and I do proper risk assessment, etc. But back then, when I was like a pure, risk DJ, and I could just throw money everywhere, even though I didn't have any. But like I was like 18, 19, I had nothing to lose. Um, uh, I would just throw money everywhere, and it really helped me. Originally, it was crypto back then. Yeah, I made some money, but my idea of crypto was it wasn't at that time still to be my main income. At that time it was like, listen, if I can make this much money, I could fund music or whatever, because I had some other side hobbies at that time. So I was like, maybe I could fund my music a few $100 to make a song. um but yeah, over time that changed, and I'm like, listen, I can make a lot more money through this than I could pursuing my hobbies. And so I'm like, I'm gonna put everything down. I'm gonna stop project management. Obviously I've already built some experience in the space itself in Web3, building for projects, but then I got into the investing aspect of the space, which is a whole different ballpark to what I was doing. So yeah, I had some knowledge, but I didn't know what to do with it when it comes to investing. But yeah, and then obviously I launched my own projects from my experience investing, and then also with my experience of project management and development, I was able to come up with a gap in the market that existed. I made some good money off that, and unfortunately, that business model didn't work long term. However, the experience and the lessons learned are you can't put a price on them, right? So I keep carrying them over into everything I do, and yeah, luckily I got into the space at the right time. Honestly, I think um, obviously if I got in slightly earlier or slightly later, it would have been better because I got in at the peak of the bull, and so everything crashed, and that's why I lost a bunch of money. I got into the end of the bull, and then all of a sudden it's bare, and all my tokens were zero. But I was still so new in the space that it didn't really affect me in a way. Like I didn't feel like I had to give up. Whereas a lot of friends of mine that also started with me gave up because they didn't see the vision that we saw, me and Jordan. And so we kept at it. Like Jordan saying, you definitely need some luck in this space. I think it's 99% hard work and 1% luck, but that 1% goes a long way. Um, there's a saying that someone said, if you work every single day, 365 days a year, one of these days you're going to get lucky. You always get lucky if you don't miss a day. The idea is that when you get that lucky day, you're there, you're set, you're ready to seize it. And so this is why you need to continue pushing, improving 1% daily, and just making sure that you're ready for success, because the market can change in an instant.
Very interesting and very inspiring. So the takeaway is grit and persistence. So if you are a founder, you need to have grit and persistence, because I mean, I was in the previous podcast, I was talking to another founder, and it's like, and I asked him what is his advice for other founders to, first of all, start a startup. And it's like, don't start a startup. That was his advice, which means that it sucks. It's very difficult, right? On the outside, it's always like grass is greener on the other side. It's like, okay, I'm going to launch a project, I'm going to raise money, I'm going to build a product, and money would start flowing in. I mean, this is like what most delusional founders think how things work. So, and again, it's hard. Like, again, you guys, and I'll ask you some questions where you can share your personal experience running this product. But the takeaway is hard. Starting a startup is hard. But as long as you have grit and persistence, you can keep going on. Amazing. So from your story, it looks like that you guys are well versed in trading. So you know how the markets work. You were very involved in the DeFi space. And then you saw in the gap in the market, you came together to launch a product. But before we jump into that, briefly, if you can explain what is the DeFi space, because the product that you're working on is in the DeFi space, right? If we were to segment the market, DeFi is one segment and you guys are building in that. And you guys had the experience because you were traders yourself. Because one thing I've realized that if the founder does not have experience in that specific niche or segment, they won't succeed. They don't know like what are the ups and downs, because you guys being traders yourself who were trading on daily basis, losing money and obviously making money, from the customer's perspective, how things work. So tell me, what is the DeFi space for those of the people that are watching or the founders that plan to build in the DeFi space? And then why did you build what you are building? And then explain what is Galaxy. If any one of you can go ahead, please.
Yeah, 100%. I can take that. So DeFi stands for decentralized finance, for people who don't know, and it's basically a massive playground in crypto, where the entire crypto and blockchain space would be utilizing different mechanisms and different systems to make your money more useful towards you, right? To make your money work for you, and scenarios such as yield farming, for example. That's a huge component of DeFi, where you'd be able to compound your already made gains or your lost gains or your lost funds into a farm where you'd have an annual percentage yield, for example, and you can compound that day to day. So yield farming and yield is a massive part of it. And overall, DeFi goes into so many sectors: DEXs, decentralized exchanges, which is what Galaxy is, right? Being able to trade self-custody without the need for intermediaries on exchanges, no KYC, amazing slippage, low fees. These are all of the benefits of trading on DEXs. So DeFi, yeah.
Yeah, I think a better way to put it would be that we have centralized finance where there's borrowing, lending, and all these things that you talk about, right? That in the normal world that exists. But the problem that, from my experience, is that not everyone have access to it. So if you need to get into some deals or some plays or some opportunities, you need to have a certain capital to get in. DeFi, which is the opposite of that, is that it's not centralized, okay, and anyone can get in, and anyone with as little capital can get access to those opportunities that only the few people have in the traditional world. Would that be a better way to put it, Kyle and Jordan?
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I completely agree. There's no restrictions. There's no criteria. There's no requirements for DeFi. Anyone can start. I started with a very small amount of money, and did well there. And it follows the narrative of crypto, about self custody and being able, and giving power back to the individual and back to the little guy as well. Being able to utilize tools that that centralized finance would already be utilizing on steroids, right? So I think that's a perfect way to describe it.
I think there's something to add to that. Like, you're giving people access, opportunity, maybe people who want to be able to have custody, etc. But what I really like about DeFi is the ability that there's literally, like you said, zero restrictions. Like, there's so many places where, centralized exchanges may be banned and maybe you can't really buy crypto. But you could, if you could somehow get your hands onto crypto via transfer, maybe someone sends you. Wallets are free to make. Transactions are obviously, there's transaction fees, but there's no regulations. That it's completely free to use for everyone. And so DeFi really allows you to bring what's already currently offered in the real world on centralized, regulated aspects into a decentralized manner where no matter where you are in the world, you can make use of crypto. And I think that's the biggest key here. It, in my opinion, is my favorite sector overall.
Yeah,
Very
it's
nice,
also
very
about
interesting.
truth as well. I mean,
Yeah.
truth
So
is the number one thing when it comes to blockchain technology. You can verify and identify the exact origin of every single transaction, whether it's being received or being sent, and even in the realm of prediction markets, which is such an upcoming trend. Being able to block out the legacy media and actually identify what the current trends are with prediction markets, such as poly market, for example.
yeah, I
That's a
created a
point.
video. I created a video on it like yesterday. It's amazing product.
Awesome.
They're
Yeah.
generating a lot of revenue. Very amazing. So if we were to summarize, it's transparent and permissionless, decentralized financial system, which gives opportunity to everyone in the world as long as they have an internet connection and a device and they can speak English. I mean, these are the prerequisites.
And so
Amazing. So
Even that's optional, to be honest. Like
really,
there's many communities that, like, you don't need to speak English in. Like, crypto is worldwide, so
yeah.
this is why I'm
Okay.
saying there's zero restrictions. There's communities, there's Russian communities, whatever.
yeah.
There's even sectors, right? We work with Galaxy, we have KOLs. Most of our KOLs are based in US, Europe, but there's a whole different sector in Asia that we don't even have access to because we don't know people there. But we're constantly chiseling away and figuring out our way how to get into that community because of the language barrier, etc. But like, that's why I'm saying, no matter where you are, there's a community there in those areas.
Yeah.
For Galaxy, we had a community of Vietnamese. Sorry, for Swift, my previous project, we had a community of Vietnamese people. And you know, it's crazy because we don't speak their language. However, we had a intermediary person that connected us that speaks both languages, and because of that, we were able to bring people from a whole different part of the world into our decentralized DeFi product, right? And that's the beauty of what we're offering. What DeFi is, and what it means to everyone.
Very nice. Very interesting. So now we have explained what is DeFi. We've explained what does it mean to people. I want to get into the product that you're working on, which is Galaxy, which is an OTC marketplace. So I want you to explain what is the product, dumb it down so an average person can understand it, and then tell me why are you working on it? Because why is something that I'm personally obsessed with. Are you guys familiar with Simon Sinek?
No.
Not
Okay,
personally.
so Simon Sinek is an author who has written a book called Start with Why, which means that anything that you do in the world, you need to know why you are doing it, because majority of the people know how to do it. No, majority of the people know what they are doing. Some of them know how to do it, but a very few know why they are doing it. Why is like a clear reason why I am doing this, right? So this is the question I ask everyone, every guest on this podcast. Like, why are you working on this? Like, what is your reason? What is your, uh, motive behind it? Because making money, that's one thing. Money is a fuel that is needed to achieve a vision. But like, what problem did you sow, or what opportunity did you sow that you're like, okay, we have to build this? So please explain me what is Galaxy Protocol, and then why are you working on it?
Totally. So Galaxy pretty much is the first ever competitor to Whales Market, which is currently the market leader. These guys launched in January, and what we are offering is a pre-market trading terminal that supports anonymity, so anonymous transactions, and low collateral, right? So you wouldn't have to put up too much money to back up your sellings and your offers. Now, this is a very new technology that only just came out in January, right? Whales Market, again, are the first people to introduce this. We've seen their model. We like it. However, they have some flaws, and that's the problem with being first in the market, that sometimes you might not think of everything, and then someone second mover usually is able to
Just,
identify these
just,
gaps.
just like how Blur did with OpenSea, they took the market share from them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. It's always good. Like, even I remember when we play games as children, and it would be like a shooting game, for example, football. like whoever scores the most wins. Obviously, you're gonna want to go second, so you know what number to beat. Because psychologically, right? If you already have a number in your head, and listen, this person got this number. If I do one more, I win. You're gonna be more inclined to push that. Whereas if you're doing it first, you could easily underestimate the next person behind you and say he's not gonna beat 8, so I'll just stop here, and you're not gonna push yourself. And so the same thing can kind of apply to business, where if you're the first mover, you're not really going to push yourself to say what's wrong with this, because there really isn't a reason to. You're like, there's no one in the market at the moment, so what's the point? And it's really toxic. Unfortunately, it's how people do business. It's understandable. Obviously, you can't have a perfect product. There's always going to be flaws. Um, Even if you spend months and months thinking on it, the fact that it's the first version, the first iteration, means it's not going to be perfect. It's just a given. Now, the reason why we've decided to build Galaxy is strictly due to the fact that so many times I would have invested into a token, a private sale allocation, or whatever, before the launch, and these guys would either not give me conviction through their socials, either they're delaying the launch, or overall just would have lost confidence in the token itself. And just overall, I want to kind of get rid of the allocation as soon as possible. And when I saw this issue that I was currently having, I looked into the market and I was like, is there any platform that's supporting this? And coincidentally, Wales Market had launched like 2 months before I started to think of this. And I looked at them, I identified their problems. I saw if I could list the token on their platform, and they didn't even support the chain. And so I was asking questions. I was like, is there another platform? No. Why? And I started asking myself these questions. Like, why don't they do this? Why is it this? Why don't they support this token? And after that, you know, I start to take notes, and I start to do market research within my circle, with the people I know. Obviously, I'm very connected myself in multiple groups. I know a lot of people that I've even done business with in the past. And coincidentally, I also met some people in my circle that also used whale markets before. And so I was able to get some feedback from them. And from that, I was able to compile a bunch of reasons internally to why we need a platform like Galaxy. Uh, the ability of Galaxy to be able to list whatever you want with no restrictions. We have a verified and an unregulated section, with a very user-friendly interface, allowing people to, with as much little collateral as possible needed to list on the platform, means it's more affordable for people who may not have as much liquidity on hand, right? These questions are things that I ask myself when seeing their not just their product and their need, but I understand the use of specific features, but I wouldn't understand why they did it in that way, right? Um, and so we pretty much narrowed it down, and we figured out what the perfect solution we believe is. That being said, Galaxy is always on the road to improve. A mission that we've got for Galaxy is to remove collateral entirely. That's our number one goal. As a business, we're trying to make it a platform where you could list tokens pre-market without having to put up additional money, to back your promise. Now we're exploring a bunch of current options. However, it is a very challenging thing to do, especially in an unregulated, decentralized finance space like we spoke about before. There's benefits of it being unregulated, and there's also drawbacks of it being unregulated. And that's something very important that you need to consider when you're doing a business in DeFi, right? There's a lot of people who are going to try and, be malicious and find loopholes in your application in order to maximize their ROI themselves. And so these are all things that you need to consider when you're building on the platform.
Yeah,
Very
yeah, yeah.
interesting.
When I think of Galaxy, I think of it as a marketplace, where we're actually allowing a intervention of providing liquidity to illiquid assets. So assets which I haven't even reached the open market yet, we're providing a liquidity space for those assets to be traded, when a seller would need instant liquidity for his airdrops tokens. The airdrop meta is massive at the moment. So users need
Uh,
liquidity for those airdrop tokens, or their private sale tokens. Being
yeah.
able to trade tomorrow today.
Got it. So for those of you watching who don't know what is an airdrop meta, go please watch the first episode because we talked a lot about that. So one project that we're working with, Jordan and Kyle, is Shadow War. It's a gaming project, and they have done the airdrop meta perfectly. They have like 60,000 users currently who are doing that. So very interesting topic. Please go check that out if you don't know what is an airdrop meta. All right. So if I were to summarize and dumb it down for people like me who are not that smart like you guys, is basically uh, uh, ODC Marketplace are a platform where people can go and sell their tokens or coins to someone else peer to peer because they can't go and sell them on centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges because they haven't been listed yet. So that's like ODC Marketplace. Then there was no product out there and there was a demand. So Wales Market was the first one to do that, and they did like very recently. I didn't know that. And then you were using that platform, right? And you saw some problems that did not exist, and you, because again you were trying to use it for your own sake, right? Because you were solving, but you realized that they are missing some things. Why don't we go and build a better thing? So the thing that you did was you're trying to solve your own problem, and in doing so you realize there is a big potential. So one thing that I want to talk about in this episode and the future episode for founders, how to come up with ideas. So far in the first episode, the advice was if you come up with an idea, let it cook and solve your own problem. In the second episode as well with Toli, the idea was also solve your problem. So it seems that there's a pattern. So for the founders that are watching who are working on a project and do plan to work, is that maybe the framework could be solve your own problem. So can you share more on that? How can founders that want to become a founder or they're actually working on projects figure out an idea to work on? Because ideas are cheap. Execution is all that matters. And you have to find the right balance of solving your own problem and having conviction, because sometimes founders can be delusional. They might be solving a problem that no one really cares about. So Kyle and Jordan, if anyone of you want to talk about how to pick up idea to work on, is it best to always solve your own problem, or there's another way you can figure out on what idea to work on? And I want you to tell, like, what sort of conviction should founders have? Should they have complete faith in their idea and their vision, or they should listen to the market, or they should listen to other people around them? Because I think that's a challenge that people might be facing currently.
No, I agree. You brought up some good points. The most important thing, right, from my experience as a founder, and even working with people, like I said, I've worked with multiple founders as a project manager, and I always poked around. I got to know the guys and like what their beliefs are, and their characters, and you can really see that reflect in their business and the way they handle things. You definitely need to have a personal cause to why you're doing it. It just is as it is. You can't go and build a competitor to TikTok, for example, if you don't personally feel that there's something wrong with the platform and you can do something better, right? That being said, I don't believe that listening to the market is that important. I think you definitely need to be able to have your own direction, and figure out what you think is valuable in the space, strictly due to the fact that you might be the first to come up with a groundbreaking idea. You look at Friendtech, some of the first technology ever invented in the space, which is crazy. These guys made millions and millions of dollars through a very simple platform. Like it's not that complicated overall.
It seems simple, but like they came up with it, and that was like amazing idea. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like, in hindsight, everyone's smart, right? And once you see it, you say, "Oh, it's not that hard." But like thinking of it, figuring out how it's going to work on the blockchain, these things are things you need to come up with. However, these guys felt that something is missing in the space, and strictly this thing was missing in the space, and so they decided to build it. There was a personal cause. It doesn't need to necessarily be, listen, I like my case, where I had tokens, I couldn't sell them, and I decided to make a platform for it, because so many people have issues and they don't really act on it. They're just, okay, I'll wait for something to come, or they'll just deal with it another way, right? However, when you see that there's a gap in the market and you know that you can generate revenue, hopefully, usually the best ideas that you can build on are ideas that have already been proven to work. If you really want to have a successful business. However, if you want to make even more money, then there's risk. Obviously, you need to go into a sector build something completely brand new. But that takes a lot of imagination. It's more complicated, and it requires you to have more experience as a founder, because you not only need to invent something new, but you also need to know how to build it,
Yeah.
and take care of all the small systems. You look at Galaxy. Obviously, Galaxy is more complicated in regards to features. However, if we were to start the same way that Wales market did, and we were the first like Wales market, just like I said the point before, we would make mistakes too. It's just how it is. You're never gonna have the perfect first model, right? And so that's really important that you could really understand, and you only get that experience as a founder by building products in the space. And that's why I suggest usually as founders to don't invent something new. You don't need to. You can make a lot of money by working on something that already exists. So many platforms they
Very
launch.
interesting. Right. So the takeaway for the people that are watching is that if you can solve your own problem, cool. But you don't need to reinvent the wheel. If there exists a solution or a product out there, if you can slightly improve it, you can take the market share from them. Just like there's so many countless examples like Blur, which we talk about, and like you guys are doing with um, Galaxy competing with ODC Marketplace. Because in that case, there are users, right? Like, because in some cases, founders don't even know that there is a demand for their product, but there is a demand
Exactly.
for them. If we just build the right product, they will come to us. Amazing. Very interesting. So Jordan, do you want to add something on that? Like, how can founders choose ideas to work on? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of founders starting out or emerging founders have a little too much delusion in terms of ideas they think would work, but are just stupid in the long run. For example, when we were starting out, we thought about a protocol, and this sounds awesome on paper. However, when you actually break it down, it's ridiculous. However, a protocol where it would provide insurance for tokens that rug pull. We didn't like yeah, that's the exact face all of the VCs who had calls with made. So it was yeah, it's a pretty silly idea
I'm
because
curious, how would that work actually? Because if you were able to figure that out, that's it. How would
yeah,
that work? I'm curious. Please tell us
like
more.
that's the thing. It's either overly ambitious or overly delusional. I mean, in our mind, it was like, okay, so we'd have a fund of maybe 7 figures as a war chest to provide listed tokens on our platform. That if the team does something malicious, then they're covered by us. And these obviously wouldn't be every single token launched on Ethereum, Solana, or whatever. It will be tokens which we've partnered with, or tokens which we've uh, deemed verified on our page, for example. So that's actually a
Got it.
business which we delved into, and maybe if we had much more experience back then, we could have turned it into something cool. However, yeah, it just didn't end up working out. There's an issue there of how does that business actually generate cash flow? Who's paying us? You could say, okay, the project might pay you, but then it's like how do you value that as a product or as a service? It's more of a marketing gimmick than anything.
Yeah.
So I think the number one
Makes
thing
sense.
that founders need to take into account when actually building their business is cash flow and how the business is going to make money, how easy it is to make money. It's usually to a fee service. So if you have a business that is a service in terms of a DEX, a swap, a bunch of other services, Fintech did it recently as well, that takes a fee from the amount that they're utilizing, that the capital of the user will be using. That's usually the simplest business model to go under. We saw it as well with Telegram sniper bots recently that just take a fee of your trading volume. That's it. Super simple, super easy, generated 6 figures easily with that type of business model. And yeah, I think the number one thing in terms of advice I would give founders is to really focus on cash flow and explaining it to venture capitals, explaining it to partners, angels. It's the core of your business. How are you as a business? How am I as a founder? How are the venture capitalists investing in us going to make their money? I'm going to make money, and how are they going to exit or whatever? So that's pretty much
Got it.
what
Okay.
I would suggest in
Yeah.
terms
So
of founding.
so your advice. Yeah. So your advice is that founders need to figure out before they even start their business model, like how are they going to make money, and one way to do that like you said, is like trading fees, like many projects are doing. You mentioned sniper bots. When I figured out BonkBot, they were doing, I think, I don't want to say exact number, but around 30. I don't want to say a number, but they were doing six figures in revenue, just like a simple trading Telegram bot. And actually, that was a product I loved because that was solving a problem. Because when the meme coins meta came out like a few months ago, everyone wanted to be the first one to get in a coin, right? And normally the way you would do it is, go to a DEX, connect your wallet and do that. But when I figured out that I can do that on my phone on Telegram, I was every day, even when I'm in the gym or in the car, like I was like me and my partner Shahroz, we were just like sending each other contract addresses, just buy this, buy that. And then they had a feature of order trading, which allows you to copy the trades of winning wallets. That was like a game changer. So I personally had some success in that. So the takeaway from both of you is that if you can find an idea or a problem that you personally want, because you have to choose a problem to work on that you want to solve it for yourself, and then figure out if the market also needs that, so you can give them a second. Is from day one, focus on figuring out revenue. And I think that is my advice to people as well. And I wrote an article on that focus on RGA, which means that revenue generating activities. If you're doing anything in your business in the early days, you have to make sure it is a revenue generating activity. So to give you an example of our business, I've been doing this business for the past 4 or 5 years, almost 3 years officially. And now is the only time when I'm going out there and doing things like podcasts. I wouldn't do this on the first month or first 3 months because this wouldn't generate revenue instantly. This might bring some traction or more visibility or build my brand in the longer run. But so the advice is figure out a business model and focus on RGA, which is revenue generating. Amazing, guys. That's like, I hope founders can act on that. Cool. So now we've figured out like the space you're working in, the product that you're working in. We have also figured out why you're working in. What challenges have you faced so far, like building this product? Like if you can share a few examples. And then what is the framework you have used to overcome that? And like make it so actionable that people that are struggling today with their projects, one of them could be fundraising, which is like a very hot topic in all the episodes. Second is maybe it could be product development or go-to-market strategy or ideation. I think we covered ideation, right? So share the problems that you've shared in your journey so far with either Galaxy or the previous product that you work on. And how did you overcome that? Do you have a framework that other people can use? If you can share that.
So I speak for I think every founder in the space when I say that fundraising is the hardest and most difficult aspect of any business. If your business is actually good and you have the money, you can do anything. It's about how do you get that money? How do you convince people before you even show the value of the business that it's worth that money? How do you get them to send it to you? That'd be through a token, that'd be through, equity, whatever. Galaxy is doing the fundraising during a very difficult period in the market where there's not much liquidity, and that's why we tend to see things slow down at times like this, because everyone's holding on to their cash. They don't want to risk. It doesn't make sense to them right now. However, in our past, we've raised numerous hundreds of thousands of dollars for multiple projects, and usually the number one thing you can have is just be prepared. Have all the documentation ready. Don't let any little detail slip. Make sure you've got a good reason why. For example, if you're doing a token, make sure you know why you're doing the token. Does it make sense to have the token? Is there an actual utility to the token? Make sure you've got the documentation, the branding, all of this sorted, because people will ask for you, and you need to kind of have this stuff sorted beforehand, right? It facilitates a lot the fundraising process more than people would think. Some people just do a pitch deck, just explain the product, but there isn't really a plan to what they're gonna do with the money, how they're raising it, when's the platform launching, etc. They just do a small pitch deck about the idea, and that's it. And maybe they say at the end of the slide that they're all looking for like 50K, for example. That stuff doesn't really work anymore. People are smarter now, and people are very selective on where they throw the money. So you definitely need to have all these things in place before you even look to go for money. That being said, there are a lot of solutions, and myself actually as a founder, it's something I plan on helping people with in the future. Sometime when Galaxy finds its footing, I plan on offering a similar service myself, since obviously now I have experience with fundraising. I plan on offering a similar service to people where I can help them get their ideas funded. As a founder myself, I know what people will look for, etc. So I think at the moment there isn't one solution that offers the idealization to fundraising stage, everything, you know. And so we're pretty much, my plan is that in the future I would offer that kind of service, like
Got
an
it.
incubating software or whatever.
Got it.
However, um, that being said, it's still very possible to even do it alone. You just need to continue grinding networks. It just takes time. Um, but when momentum shifts, it shifts. Like, this is why I tell Jordan a lot. Like, I'm not worried about days where it's slow, because I know that if we keep pushing, eventually the momentum will shift. And we've gone from raising 1K in 4 days to raising hundreds of thousands of dollars in 4 days. Like it shifts instantly. It's just a matter of where you position yourself and how you're selling it to people, and that you have everything that's documented properly, already sorted. But in my
Got it.
opinion, that's the biggest bottleneck that people would experience in any business, because I think idealization, etc., these are things you can control. But when it comes to funding, it can sometimes come to how people perceive it, and you can't really always control that.
Yeah. Going back to the first episode, I was like, on with Roy, the founder of Shadow War. They recently raised $5 million in funding, and that guy personally has raised like over $20 million in funding. So the framework that he shared was that fundraising is just like dating. So if you think from a girl's perspective, she's like, okay, check boxes: tall, dark, handsome, blue eyes, six figures, car,
Yeah.
job. So it's like check boxes for a girl, right? If the boy fits all the check boxes, she'll go on a date with him. So from an investor's perspective, like, okay, do they have a pitch deck? Do they have the socials? Do they have the product ready? Do the founders have experience? Do they know how to make money? So it's like check boxes. So if the more check boxes you fill, the more attractive of an investment you become for a founder, right? Because again, founders, so people think that founders would just give you money, VCs would just give you money to build a product, but they have struggled so hard to make their money, and they're more experienced than you. Unless and until you don't convince them that you would not waste your money, they wouldn't give you. So I think,
Yeah.
so you, from what, if we were to summarize, the biggest challenge that you have faced in your journey so far is fundraising, and the solution to them is that obviously grit and persistence. These are the two things you have to keep at it. And then is that, like you said as well, you keep improving. You keep becoming more of an attracting and attractive investment. Because I personally have had experience not in Web3, even before that. And then when we went with an idea, because we're working on AI solutions, like you're just three immigrants kid with an idea, and you're still university, you have no track record. So at that time, that was kind of painful, because we were rejected. But now I'm like, okay, it's a good thing they rejected us, because if they would have given us money at that time, we would just have ended up wasting it. But now if they were to give money to us, but now if I'm in a different position, I don't want anyone's money. Because what I've realized from my uncle, he has an OT, online travel agency, and he has raised, like, his startup is valued at $18 million. So he told me one, and from what I see is that people think raising money is easy, but it's like another headache. You have to now meet the expectations of your investors, and then it's just an extra added pressure. So the main challenge you face is, so if I were to summarize, fundraising, and the way to overcome is, first of all, grit and persistence to keep at it, and then keep improving, and then eventually you'll raise. Is there any other advice that founders need to keep in mind fundraising? Because, like I said, this is the biggest problem. Like you said, you speak for all the founders. This is the biggest problem. So, Jordan, do you have anything to say on how they can improve their product or project, or what are the things that they can work on so they are more likely to get funded? Because from what I've realized, that there are some companies that will work without funding, like us, like a service-based business, they can keep working without funding. But there are some products that wouldn't work without funding, just like in your case. So what do you want to share with them, like actionable steps that you can give them today to become more of an attractive investment?
Yeah, I think it's just being prepared. It's all about being prepared, and it's all about communication. You have to communicate the idea. You have to communicate. The number one thing you have to communicate to these venture capitalists is that you have to communicate to them how they're going to make money. How are they going to make money? How fast is it going to be? And potentially how much as well. That's pretty much it. That's really all they care for. I'm sure they care about the tech and solving some problems and that. But if you're doing that, what's going to be the result or byproduct? You're going to make money because people are using your platform. So that's really just the end goal. They don't, these firms and angels aren't lending people money. They want to make a profit. This is their business, and this is how they want to stay profitable in the long term, right? If they were to just merely invest in every single founder and every single product or project, then that very quickly go bankrupt. So I think it's just being really well. Yeah, it's just about being good at communicating how they're going to make money. And I think that eventually said individuals will find success. Also, besides that, it's about communicating the terms sheet about what terms they'll be getting, if the terms are very favorable to them or not. So I think it's just a mixture of those two added on to what Kyle said.
Got it. And currently, do you think is it better to raise money with crowdfunding, like launching a token or something, or is it better to sell to angels and private groups and VCs?
Yeah,
What's better right now?
yeah. I think at the moment, again, it depends on the business. It depends on the business model. We saw that Frentech, for example, did very well without the token for the longest time, and then that launched, and it didn't perform how people were expecting. But it just depends on the business model. If there's a way where you can cut in these angels and these venture capitals into your business in the form of equity or a similar structure without harming yourselves too much and harming the business too much, then um, that's that's a great solution, because you don't have to have the headache of a token, of managing the token, and all that stuff. It's just extra pressure. That being said, it's easier to raise while promising a token fundraising event, um, just because it's very easy to communicate to people, right? So you're investing in this, you're investing in a token pre this round, you're getting these terms, you're getting at this evaluation. There's a TGE token generation event is on this date. After this date, you start making money. That's it. That's pretty much it. Should the project be not completely useless, right? So, I think the TDLR for that would be that a token raise event would be easier. However, if you can find a way to raise through equity, it'll just be less of a headache down the line. And if you look at, it's really interesting. If you look at the top crypto products at the moment, Polymarket, even Frentech before they launched the token, Hyperliquid, what do a lot of these projects have in common? These super hyper successful projects don't have a token, right? So I think that that's a very big part on onboarding Web2 users to Web3, is that you're not exposing them to the risk of a token attached to your project, rather
Yeah.
than them actually just using your product.
Yeah, because I think if a project launches a token, because it's something that we have contemplated a lot with a lot of founders, because we work with a lot of founders. Like, one thing we've realized, and that's what I was talking to another guy as well, is that you don't want to attach the sentiment of the community or the product to a chart, because then they fail to see the vision. Because then, if let's say if you launch a token for a Galaxy, and then some people would like, okay, why the price isn't going up, and then instead of you guys focusing on the product, you'll be focusing on keeping the price up. So I personally think that you should not launch a token unless it's absolutely necessary, because then you create another set of challenges that you have to deal with. Because and keeping a community happy in Web3, it's like it's
All right.
difficult. So very amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So Kyle and Jordan, we have touched a
Yeah.
lot on ideation, fundraising, but I want to talk about product development. That is my bread and butter. How important it is to develop a high quality product, and how much of a project's success depends on building a high quality product. Because previously you touched on user experience and then scalability. So give me your thoughts on what should founders do when they are when they focus on the technical side of the product, like the actual product. Because most projects in the Web3 space are a product, just like you brought up Polymarket. They've built a really good user experience. The product is really fast, it's scalable. So in your experience, how important it is to focus on product development, and then what advice is for for founders to spend time and money on product development?
I think product development is the most important part of the business. Obviously, we spoke about fundraising, etc. But to fundraise an actual product, it needs to be of quality, right? You need to have a team that's capable of building it, and overall, the product needs to make sense. My advice would be to take your time, find the right gaps in the market, and make sure that the utility makes sense and that you have a team capable of executing the idea and then communicating it well to the public. There's a lot of people who, especially with these low cap meme coins that just launched random meme coins and they wouldn't get anywhere. I think it's one of the reasons why crypto as an industry is being held back. I think as regulations come into this space, it's really going to help show what products are valuable and what's going to stand out. And you want to definitely position yourself to be around in the next few years, the next decades. So the only way you can do that is by having a good product and good utility that makes sense. And that's at the top of the chain in regards to what you're offering, right? So, sure, I could try compete with Uniswap, but there's so many competitors there. I could have the best product overall. It doesn't matter how good my team is to build it. But if the actual gap in the market doesn't make sense, it's going to be a waste. Like, people aren't going to appreciate the work that you've done and the innovation you've brought to the space on that front. So that's why it's very important that not only is the product of high quality in regards to development, but product quality regards to the ideation of it also is very important.
Makes sense. What are your thoughts, Jordan, on product development? Like
Yeah.
focusing on the product.
You go ahead.
No, that's it. Go ahead, please.
Awesome. Yeah, no worries. So in terms of product development, I think it's a major component in a business, right? So if you're even for fundraising, not just fundraising, marketing, pitching it to people. Once people look at your project, who's building your project, luckily we're in great hands in terms of Nalikes have done a great job of building our working on Galaxy and the platform. However, I think it's such an important aspect. When people actually come to use your platform, this we live in a generation where people's sort of mind frame and their attention span, that's right, that's the correct word, is extremely low, mainly due to stuff like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and stuff like that. Everyone's attention span is extremely low. And once they see a error or a glitch or a UX flaw or a backend flaw in the product, they're immediately going to get a bad impression, and most likely than not, never visit the product again, or it'll be a one-time experience. And it's all about user retention at the end of the day. If you have a platform where a user can keep coming back to satisfy their needs, whatever service you'll be offering to them, it's just going to compound in terms of how much revenue you guys are making, and so forth. There's so many projects in Web3. I know a few of them where they wouldn't have a very large user base, but the user base they have keep coming back, and that alone is generating them a massive amount of revenue. So, user retention is really compiled with product development and how good your product is.
Very interesting. There's another thing that we talk with a lot of founders is that, okay, once you have come up with an idea, once you have figured out that there is demand, the next obvious step is to, you can either go raise funds for it or you can just bootstrap it with your own money and you're building a product. Do you think is it better to just have the first basic version, or like we call it an MVP, and put it out there on the market? Or is it good to just keep spending time, months building the right product and then putting it out there? Because based on our experience, we have realized that it's always good to have the first version, like the minimum that you can do. Because there is a saying, right? If you're not embarrassed of the first version of your product, you're too late to launch the product. So and that's what we advise founders, is to get the first version out there and then we can keep iterating on it. Because once it's in development, we don't know how the market would react to it, right? So what we suggest is that you build the first version, get it out there, and then based on the market's response or the users, you pivot. So what are your thoughts on that? Is it best to just get the first version out there ASAP, or just keep perfecting the product and do it? Because what I've seen is that most founders are too scared to launch. They just keep on working on, like, I'll add this feature, I'll make this graphic like this, I'll make it so, and they never launch. So what is your advice and what is your experience? And with Galaxy, obviously.
Well, definitely showing a beta app of like what you and your team can build is very important. We found, especially with Galaxy, and in the past we've already had betas. However, even with Galaxy specifically, when you're building something new, where people start to ask questions like, why doesn't it exist yet? the number one thing they usually think of is maybe it's too hard to build. And so by showing that you're capable of building it ahead of time, putting an MVP out there, like we call it, and a minimum viable product of like what is the least you can offer, is very important. It shows capability in the team, and it shows that people who are investing know that at least, even if the business were to maybe not work out in the next few years, at least they know that they're capable of building it, and that if they truly believe in the business model, they know that you can act and actually fulfill what you're saying you will. So for sure, I think it's has to go up as like one of the priorities for sure when you're making a business. Think of the product. How long will it take you to build? How much startup capital do you need to build? Can you fund it yourself internally for now, or is it maybe not affordable? If it's not affordable, can you get an angel investor? What's the angel investor going to get? Etc. So you can kind of start to trickle down this information to figure out, you know, next steps, and then you could start offering people timelines and betas, etc. To really see the product in its full.
Very interesting. Jordan, what are your thoughts on that?
In terms of an MVP product and how important that is to founders, to angels, to venture capitals, I think it's a major aspect in terms of being able to raise money, bringing confidence to the investors, and also showing users what you guys are capable of building as a team. If the product is has potential and if it's good quality. So these are a lot of components which I would deem valuable. If I were an investor, I'd want to see a product 100%, even the bare skin and bones of said product. And if it's something which I see from the get-go that can be improved on, has a bunch of potential, you're gonna 2x my chances of me investing in you, basically. So it's I think it's valuable, very valuable.
So going back to the points that we covered previously, right? Being prepared and having checkboxes. So another checkbox that founders can have if they want to fundraise is that at least have some sort of product or like an MVP. Amazing. So that covers product development, and the summary is product development is very important. If founders are technical, cool, they can figure out themselves. If they are non-technical, they can partner with the right people. And then and the next step is of get your product out there as soon as possible. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that it helps you become a more attractive investment, and the second is obviously you'll get market feedback, because at the end of the day, users are going to use your product. That's very amazing. So Jordan and Kyle, where is Galaxy now? For, let's say, if and what would you like to say to the investors that potential investors that might be watching this? And again, this is no investment advice, do your own research. But what would you say to investors? And then what would you say to the users that are active? Like, I'm pretty sure some DeFi traders would be watching this. What would you like to say to them? And lastly, the community, because community is a big word in Web3. What would you say to them, your product, and what is next for Galaxy? I know that's a very big question, but
Yeah, I can let Jordan touch up on that for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So where Galaxy is at the moment, just to touch on the first part, the market which we've seen recently has started to pick up, which I think is a super underrated aspect if you're raising in crypto. Everyone is fully allocated to altcoins or even majors, so to speak. So, when we enter these mini bear markets or bear seasons where assets are having crazy hits to the downside, people have much less money to invest overall. It wouldn't be just for your project; it would be for every project. So I think that's a aspect that founders tend to underestimate. And in terms of where Galaxy is right now, like I said, the market's starting to pick up. We're seeing much more interest than we saw from the mid of June, for example, or beginning of June, when things took a downturn. We're currently underway with our fundraising efforts. We're in the six figures in terms of how much we raised. Like Kyle had mentioned earlier in the call, our end goal for the private round is to close almost $1 million in funding, which we're confident, should the sentiment remain how it is, it'll be achieved shortly. In terms of our development and how we're looking for that, we want to have an MVP as soon as possible. Obviously, that also correlates with how the sentiment goes and the fundraising as well. So as well, like I said, we're working actively with Nalikes. They've been amazing. We couldn't have asked for a better team. And in terms of our partners and backers, which is the one thing we've been really honing in on during this dry period, we've continued to increase the entities backing us and partnering with us. I don't want to mention too much since we have a lot in the works. However, yeah, we've tenfolded our partners from 2 months ago in terms of obviously VCs, angel investors, even market makers, and even layer ones, for example. So we've made a ton of progress. We want to make sure that both the product and the token launch are out by Q4 of this year. That's a massive milestone for us, and a big targeting point for us. And yeah, that's where we're currently standing at this point in time. And yeah, I think the future really looks bright.
Amazing. I'll ask a question that I normally don't ask. Let's say if you were an investor, would you invest in Galaxy? And if you were a user, would you use Galaxy?
That's a
That's a
question.
different mindset to think about that.
That's exactly. Me and Kai were talking about this a couple of weeks back. It's like, if I were pitched Galaxy, would I invest myself? With the terms, obviously, our entire team know about our terms, what we're offering, the valuations. So looking at everything, if I were pitched this, number one, as an investor, I look at our socials. I think that's super important. It's a super important aspect. So we've really pushed hard on this front, both this month and last month. So that's an aspect we really improved. So that would check my box personally. I'd also look at how can I make my money back and profit. That's super important. And with the terms that Galaxy has for these investors, for angels, for VCs, we've already started to see success with that and people investing in us. So so far we've received very little negative feedback or changes we could make. So that's amazing. And in terms of the user base, would I use Galaxy? I'm in a situation right now where literally in this point in time, I would use Galaxy for a multitude of reasons. For example, I'm not going to mention the project that hasn't launched yet, but there's a massive Oracle Layer 1 project with a massive following, a massive backing, huge in the space. They're massive. I had invested 5 figures into that project around 2 months ago, with promises of them launching, well before summer or at the beginning of summer. And yeah, to this date, they've kind of gone cold. And I kind of want the liquidity back now since it's been a while now, and they might end up even launching next year at this stage. So I would literally just use Galaxy for this specific scenario, and I can see so many users using Galaxy for this similar scenario as well. I'm not much of an airdrop farmer myself. I can see how airdrop guys would use Galaxy to high levels of usage. I'm more of a private sale investor, so that's how I would personally use Galaxy.
Very interesting. Kyle, any thoughts on that? Why would you invest or use Galaxy? Because I think that's a very interesting question. I'm going to ask that to
Really
everyone,
good.
even myself.
It is
Yeah.
honestly, like I said, at the beginning of this podcast, it goes back to my personal reason to why I decided to build Galaxy. I would use Galaxy, of course, no hesitation, because I wanted to build it for myself originally. So, like Jordan said so many times, obviously, I'm in a similar investment such as Jordan's,
We're in
that
the
I'll
same
get
boat,
rid
brother.
of right
We're in
now.
the same investment.
Yeah. However, that being said, I know that there's a lot of people in the space that also have the same issue. And even if like years ago, like this is not the first time that I'm experiencing this, it's a frustration that's built up over the years that I've been in crypto, right? So many times I'd invest early and either I wouldn't be, interested, or in general, maybe I might see that there's a lot of hype and I know that maybe at launch I might not be super available or I'm not the best trader and I might not be able to get a good exit. So I'll try and sell for a safe amount. I'd much rather sell at a 2x on a peer to peer and risk missing out on a 10x because I don't know how to trade. There's a lot of people who might kind of think of it like this, right? You go into a basketball game, you buy a ticket, and you don't want to go, or you just bought it for the flip, and someone who really wants to go can go and they'll pay slightly higher. It's the same thing. Um, uh, that's pretty much the reasoning of why I would use Galaxy myself. Again, the utilities and everything that's on top of this, I don't need low collateral. That's just a feature that I added because I felt that it could make the user experience better. if it was for me alone, I wouldn't go into all those extra features. And that's where you kind of say, listen, yes, it's good for me. However, is it good for everyone? Does it make sense for everyone? And that's where you kind of start to pick and choose the features you want to improve on before you pitch it to the public. There's so many things like anonymity. I don't really care if it's anonymous or not personally. I probably wouldn't use that feature, but I know that there's a big segment and sector in the space, especially lately, that's growing. That everyone is about anonymity and just having full anonymous transactions on the blockchain, since blockchain is pretty much public. You know, some people don't like that, and that's why people trade on centralized exchanges, etc. And you see anonymous swaps lately, which are doing really good, strictly due to the fact that they're offering something on a decentralized aspect that is currently only offered on centralized exchanges. So that's why I'm saying, like, I wouldn't use every feature. However, the reason of Galaxy is there because I wanted to build it, because I needed a platform like that. So I think most of the founders should relate to this, if not all of them. I think it's very bad if you have a product and you don't think you would use it yourself. If that's the case, my best suggestion is to scrap the idea completely, because it just, if you can't convince yourself to use it, then how are you going to convince others? And that's just the mentality that I have when I come to do business.
Got it. So I think that's a recurring theme, right? If you're solving your own problem, you would definitely use your product. If you're not solving your own, because I think when we got into this space, we were working with a lot of founders. They were just working on ideas where they were working with the wrong mindset. It was like, okay, there's this project that launched. They made X amount of money. We'll just do the same and we'll do that. But in doing so, they failed to realize that if it did not work, they wouldn't have conviction to continue. And there are countless examples
Yeah.
in our portfolio as well with the clients that were. I'll not mention names. Amazing. I forgot to ask one question, which is like, what is the market size of the ODC marketplace? Like, how big is the market, right? Because again, that could be the another reason that you're going out, because initially you mentioned that there's no one else solving that problem. There are like one platform. So how big is the market, and how do you see as a competition, and how should founders see the competition? Because sometimes competition can be healthy, right? Because you have someone to compete with. So how big is the market size which you guys are going after, and how do you see your competition, without saying any names, or if you want to say the names as well?
Yeah, 100%. So in terms of our competition and the market size, we're pretty fortunate in the fact that we were actually able to have have viewable figures of what we're dealing with and what our potential revenue and user base could look like, right? So like you just said, we can do that by viewing competitors, right? The number one competitor in the space at the moment, in terms of the profitability and just revenue size, has to this date generated $2 million in revenue, averaging to just a little under 400K per month.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really good
Wow.
number in general. And what I'd like to just touch on that is that it's seasonal, which is something which you have to take into account. There could be 1 month where you'd make 400K, for example, the average that they would be doing, and then there will be another month where it make 50K, just because it would be a very dry season for launches, since our product really bases a lot on launches and people trading upcoming launches and stuff like this. Obviously, we have other features where new launches don't need to happen. Like we have a feature that would allow users to trade their vested tokens in. So tokens which are vested, they can trade them in for liquidity, obviously probably at a discount, deeming how the market would value them, right? That's the beauty of it. People can market value said tokens. So to get back on my point, yeah, in terms of
So you mentioned the only platform that exists out there has generated $2 million
yeah, 2 million
so
to date
far,
from
which
January.
averages around.
Yeah.
Got it, and that averages to 400K a month. So what then? And then you also said, so how big is the market size actually? Like, what market size are we talking about? Like, what's the overall market cap for ODC marketplaces?
Yeah, so in terms of the overall market cap, it's a tough question, because what we're providing, our main service here isn't a post-launch OTC marketplace. Our main service, like for example, a project such as Where's Market, is our pre-market sector, and to really judge that, it's a very new sector. To really judge that, I think you can only look at a project such as Where's Market, where at all-time highs, they had an FDV of around 3 to 400 million. in terms of their FDV, with a actual market cap of slightly higher than 100 million. In terms of where they started, obviously it was a very low FDV project starting out. So the actual market cap capitalization of a project such as this, I think the levels to reach are extremely high. I think there's a very high ceiling, and I think a project ticking all the right boxes and making sure that it's generating enough revenue to sustain the business as a whole, I think it's just going to provide to how, for example, our token would perform, etc. I think it's a major component. I'd like to also mention that just recently we saw one of the major centralized exchanges hop on this trend. So we can't really analyze how much profit or revenue that's doing since it's not on doing analytics, etc. So Coinbase actually just launched their pre-market sector. It's a trend which is really starting to pick up. Obviously, like I said earlier in this podcast, trading on centralized exchanges has so much restrictions and there's so much obscurities that it just becomes really hard. You have to have a certain amount of capital to start. There's a very small list of verified tokens that fit the criteria for Coinbase. The tokens have to be verified by their team. So but it's really good to see exchanges such as these jumping on the trend, since we know we're in the right route at the moment. We're in the right sector.
Got it. So before we wrap up, there's one interesting thing that you brought up, that the product that you're working on can be seasonal,
Yeah.
right? So that's one thing. And then you're saying that these big companies with lots of money, like Coinbase and other, can come and capture their market anytime. Okay, so that's the second thing. And third thing is that from my experience with the competitor, they are launching new projects like a meme coin launcher to just figure out different ways of revenue. So my first question is, if a founder is in a similar situation where they're working on a product that is seasonal, what strategy should they take? What kind of moat they should develop, which is basically like, what is your moat? Like, what will help you differentiate from others? How they should figure that out, and how they should look at an idea where that if any big company with a lot of money can come in and take the market share. Because going back to the AI idea that we were working on like several years ago, the only problem was that if it were to become successful, companies like Google can come in. They have lots of capital, they have lots of engineering talent, they have the market share, they have the distribution, they'll do it. So if a founder is in a similar position, which is like a very tricky position to be in, where your product is seasonal, you don't really have a moat, and then at any time someone big with the money and distribution can come in. So like, how do you deal with that? Like, what's your strategy on that?
Yeah, I think seasonal products aren't a big issue when it comes to founders and their business models. I think the main thing is, if you do have a seasonal setup on a seasonal project or product or service, I think the main thing is to capitalize on that seasonality. And when the volume is picking up and when you are starting to see an influx of fees and users, I think the most important thing is to capitalize as much as possible on those times, right? So when you do have drier periods, you'd have a much longer runway. You'd have a pretty decent war chest in terms of how much money you would have made, when the season does come for your product to really take off or your service to really take off. So that's number one tip I would have, is that seasonal products aren't an issue, but capitalizing on the profitability when that season does come around is key, or else you go bankrupt as a business. It's just simple. The other question was about larger companies or corporations or exchanges coming in and basically not only stealing the idea but just competing. I think with our specific situation, I can talk about a bit advice for founders, but for our specific situation, we didn't find it as much of an issue, since there were OTC platforms before on centralized exchanges. Now Coinbase has tapped into the pre-market sector, and people were still using decentralized options, right? Decentralized platforms. Like I said before, just because there's a large amount of requirements, KYC, capital requirements, lack of tokens people would want to trade, tokens that Coinbase deem fit. There's so much aspects where decentralization comes into it, where it's a much better product fit for users that not only don't want to identify themselves with an exchange and want to trade anonymously, but would want more self custody over the actual assets they're trading and where their money is being used. So and having self custody over their own assets. Obviously, some people don't want to use centralized exchanges for any service. To be frank, so for us, it's not a big issue. For us, we took it as a positive, in the fact that wow, a player like Coinbase sees value in this sector and are actually building their own product to capitalize on potential revenue from this sector. So we took it as a positive, since we know should we launch our own product, we have so much more to offer than what they would have as well, since it's decentralized.
But
For other founders, I mean, my advice would be to build fast. I think
yeah, speed is of the essence. Yeah,
speed is super important. Being fast and not letting people catch up to you, since corporations that have more money than you and more resources, then they can throw you off the bus extremely quickly. If you're a slow builder,
exactly.
if you're slow at idealization, and actually engaging on an idea and executing, you're gonna not, and it's not just for massive corporations. Other competitions and other players in the space are gonna outwork you, and they're gonna take the market share, and it's gonna be a horrible time. So I think speed is super important. That's the number one thing I would give founders who want to capitalize on an opportunity. Should they find a golden opportunity in a sector that nobody has tapped into, then you have to work fast and you have to work diligently and execute fast.
Very interesting. So the takeaway here is that. So my first question was seasonal products. So if you're working in a seasonal product, especially in a seasonal market, because that's another thing, you should not really worry about, because once you do generate revenue when the season comes, you just have to be very smart with your money. Just make sure you have enough runway when you can, so that you can survive till the next season or thrive, and then you can figure out different ways to make
Correct.
money. And one thing that I like to advise is for founders that be frugal with the money. Either it's your own money or your investors' money. Just be very sure. And I think you guys are very good at it. Very nice. And the second thing was that talking about big corporations coming in. That's from what I understood is that that's a good sign, because that shows that there is demand, and it's good to have competition. Amazing. Jordan, Kyle, do you have anything on these 2 points before
No,
we
I
wrap
think
up?
that's pretty much a good summary for sure.
Very
Yeah.
nice. All right. So before we wrap up, is there anything you want to share with the world about Galaxy, or general advice for founders? Anything before we wrap up?
Some advice for listeners for sure. Um, there's a message that I wanted to share from a book that I read a few years ago.
Oh,
It's
very
called
interesting.
Atomic Habits by James Clear.
I love that book.
Pretty much, it's an amazing book. I read it a few years ago. Pretty much, he says that complaining about not achieving success despite working hard is like complaining about an ice cube not melting when you heat it from 24 degrees to 31 degrees. The tipping point for an ice cube to melt is 32 degrees, right? So out of experience, even when things are slow and it feels like you aren't making progress, keep finding something to do. 1% a day will eventually turn into uh you know 32 degrees, melt the ice, and that's pretty much where overnight success comes from. So that's pretty much the message.
Yeah, overnight success takes 10 years.
It's not really overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I'm saying, keep working. Us particularly, we've experienced this, not so much with other projects, but with this project particularly, we've struggled due to the market. And key takeaway is, if you keep working every single day and finding something to do, eventually you'll get rewarded, right? The market has natural selection right now. The best projects get picked, and the people who keep working get picked. I know so many people who were raising in the exact same time frame as us and got nowhere, strictly because they're like, I'll wait when the market improves and not do anything. These are the same type of people that you wouldn't want to invest in the future, and you'd want to stay away from. You'd want to invest in people that, even when times are tough in the market, their vision remains clear, and they're always putting one foot in front of the other to get to their destination.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Amazing. And lastly, where can people find more about you guys in Galaxy? I'll put the links in the description, but is there a specific thing where place you want to drive people to?
Yeah, definitely Twitter.
You could visit us through our X,
Yeah.
Galaxy _markets. That's pretty much our social platform where we post all of our updates, and then from that you can access our website, etc.
Very amazing. Very amazing. All right. Thank you so much for coming on, guys, today. This wraps up the episode. I hope you found this conversation as insightful and as inspiring as I did. I am really personally bullish on the DeFi space and especially Galaxy, not because we are their partners, but just because of the problem that they're solving. And anything in this
Yeah.
episode was not financial advice. Please don't invest in anything that we have said. Please do your own research. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next episode.
Thanks, Talha.
Thank you so much.